Viewer views and cues.
And sees
3.
Hey guys, welcome to That Pedal Show. Dan here.
Mick here, and welcome to Viewer Views and Cues. We've just no. That's what we used to call it. We've decided to call it VCQ. Viewer Comments and Questions.
Okay.
Yeah, it's TPS. VCQ.
Rolls off the tongue.
Go.
Oh, so last week we had Josh Scott on the show, and many of you saying that this was perhaps our best ever episode. Many of you wanting T-shirts saying "guitar better than arson," which I personally think is a great shout.
If you haven't watched it, please watch it. We took a broadly chronological jaunt through the development of overdrive pedals to discuss various things like transistors, op amps, diodes, clipping, and all that stuff. And a lot of people found it illuminating, not least Daniel and I.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Really
okay,
wonderful.
Onwards, Dan. Important issues arising.
Okay.
The door munched my list, by the way.
Off but not forgotten says, why don't y'all ever use a strap? Looks uncomfortable holding your guitar all the time.
There are two reasons. One, in the early days, we discovered that when you have a strap on, it covers up part of That Pedal Show logo, and this reads an unfortunate word. So we stopped doing that. Secondly, it's not uncomfortable at all. Do you find it uncomfortable?
Not uncomfortable. I know, and because we're also changing guitars quite a lot in the show, and that makes that more
I'm
difficult.
slowly getting used to playing sitting down. I hate playing the guitar sat down. But if you stand up...
See, I'm the opposite.
If you stand up, you move about, and Simon can't get us on the screen.
Right. Strat Matt 73 says, where's the rest of your headstock, Mick? Also, best episode yet. Well done, fellas.
Okay, it's not my headstock. It's a guitar very kindly loaned from Mac Mull Guitars. A very cool guitar, and they've gone for this absolutely no compromise headstock, which is, look, we can't make it look like a Fender. Everyone else has tried. Sir, Anderson, all those brands are trying to make it look sort of kind of like a Fender, and they fail because it doesn't. So they've gone, do you know what? Forget it. Tim Smith disagrees. About Devin Townsend. So we're jumping back to the Dev issue, which in a minute I'll give you some stats about. But Tim Smith says, is he even in a band or record? Who really cares about Devin Townsend?
I care.
Yeah.
I care deeply.
And so do 120,000 views and much love for Devi shown on that. It's been our fastest viewed video ever.
Yeah.
So our most successful video ever in 1 week.
So that's who cares, Tim Smith.
Yeah, Tim, come on.
Cigar 109. On the concept of headroom, this is interesting. Is that inherent to an amp and thus irrespective of volume settings, or is it a result of either pre or post amp levels? Using a Hot Rod DeVille volume not... He's using a Hot Rod DeVille volume not even at 2, no master volume.
Okay, Hot Rod DeVille's an interesting case in point because it has 2 channels, one of which is non-master volume, so you'll know the volume 1 on the Hot Rod DeVille is just volume and gain, and in the gain channel you've got a master volume and a gain, so you can do both. Short story is, in a non-master volume amp, when you turn up that 1 volume pot, it's turning up gain and it's turning up volume, so it's all going up like that. In a master volume amp, you can vary the difference between gain and master volume, but once you get to there, that's it. There's no more. So it doesn't matter whether you can vary it or not. Once you get to there, there's no more. Then you've got no more headroom.
Yeah, as for the non-master volume amplifiers so we just don't have that master volume pot, that's basically, imagine that's set on 10 the whole time. So with that as the gains, in some of those amplifiers as well, that bypass the master volume, you hear a click at the end where they actually disengage that pot.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So it just takes that out of the circuit. So, but headroom is a really interesting discussion. We will get into that further. But basically, as you dig in those the initial attack response from your guitar, there's enough headroom in the amplifier to amplify the whole signal. With the less headroom, that starts to clip. Are these plugged in?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Nick Wilson says, what about germanium treble boosters? Do they still have to be first in the chain? Yes. Yes, germanium treble boosters, because they use the germanium transistor, not the germanium diodes. So that that relationship, the impedance relationship with the germanium transistor, very important for that to see the inductance from the cores of your pickups. That needs to be first in the chain.
But as Josh explained, it's not just to do with that one germanium transistor, because the rest of the circuit really matters. So if it's a very primitive germanium transistor treble booster, yes. If it's one that's been designed kind of in more modern ways, maybe something by Analog Man, then maybe you get more scope in how it can be used. Depends on the pedal. Stevie Boy, you were going to tell me about
Stevie Boy.
444.
Bit off topic, but on the subject of electronics, does it matter which way around an orange drop capacitor goes? I've googled it a few times, but the search results have been fairly lengthy. Okay, it's really simple. You've got two main sorts of capacitors. You have an electrolytic capacitor, which has a plus and minus symbol on it. That's very important. That they are polarized, so it's very important that they go in the right way. And then you have the non-electrolytic ones, such as an orange drop. Now, you can put them in either way. However, some people do say that depending on the way that you put them in, they do sound different. But to answer your question, yes, you can put them in either way.
Bell Tones, hello Bell Tones, says, hi guys, could you comment on why some fuzzes work with chords and why other make chords, not power chords, so we're talking about chords with more notes than 2 notes, sound so shrill and dissonant? I've just bought a tone bender style fuzz and I find myself turning it off to check my intonation. Is it to do with the overtones they generate and the harmonics?
Yeah, so lots of fuzzes, the way they work, produce an inordinate amount of these wonderful overtones, which is why we love them. When you get into more complex chords, anything that has, if you create play a dominant 7 chord, like all the famous Hendrix thing, which is the 7 sharp 9 chord, lots of intervals in those notes, and the way they react with the harmonics in a fuzz is really interesting. I personally love that with the fuzzes, but some guys find the way that it can be harsh on the ear.
Yes,
So
because you're getting odd order harmonics, it's all trying to cave in on each other and it's not being reproduced musically. One other thing just to say on that is, if you've ever done any reading on classic recording and producers, there's a very famous producer called Mutt Langer, or Lang, who produced AC/DC. He was also Shania Twain's husband, among other things. He's produced lots of music. He was one of the first guys that kind of admitted to recording single strings at a time and pairs of strings and comping them into chords.
wow.
And I've seen this done on metal tracking sessions much more in more modern day, where if you've got something with a major third in it, for example, not that you'll hear much major third in metal, but if you've got like
Heavy metal.
that
metal.
that major third interval can be really problematic when you add gain to it,
Sure.
because it always sounds out of tune. So what do? They track these two strings. So if the riff goes like this, which it wouldn't in metal, if it goes, we're just going to forget about metal. If it goes like that, okay, they'll track this, then they'll track, then they'll track. And they'll track
Wow.
them all separately and they'll comp them into one chord because of exactly what you're talking about, to get the intonation right between the pairs of strings. Sorry for the lengthy answer. We've got 4 pages of this. We
do.
are
I'm just
never going to get through it.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Derek Rabbers, could someone explain how the JHS kilt works? The JHS kilt is Josh's take on the Ex Pandora, and he made that for Stu G. Where's the horn? There it is. Okay, so that's the kilt.
Where's the horn?
Where's the horn?
Oh, God, it's so disorganised. This is what happens when Simon's not here.
So Stu G, a very dear friend of mine, and this is Josh's pedal for him. Stu G's favourite pedal is that Ex Pandora. I don't know exactly the circuit, so that's one for Josh.
It's got 3 op amps. I googled this. It's got
Well done.
It's got 3 op amps,
Right.
and it's got varying clipping diodes.
Okay, right.
So I think I read that it's got an LED.
Right. So LED, light emitting diode, you can put the LED, use that in place of your normal,
Higher headroom than a germanium diode.
depending on the light.
Depending on the light.
colour.
Okay. It's a hybrid of all of those things that we talked about.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, and anyone who really knows will comment below. Thank you.
Lots of people commenting on Josh's kind gesture of sending us one of his MiG-50s. And look, there it is. It's arrived. It's here. Can you see it? Someone asked, where was it? Someone sent a question with a link in it. There was me on TV playing with Max Sharam and said, is this you? And I said, yes, it is me playing that amp.
Get on.
Yeah. Cinematic. So I have a question for Josh airing from this discussion on the chance you guys can ask him for a Q&A. Josh had a vlog about pedal myths. It matters what kind of chip is in a given pedal.
So does it matter? Does it or does it not matter what chip is in the pedal?
As Josh also said that the more complex the design and the more elements that go into a design, the less specific things matter, the less a specific component matters, but the less components in a design, the more that component matters. So it all depends on the design. I would say, don't forget, if you turn the diodes off, which lots of pedals now have that option, you have different clipping options, but when you turn the diodes off and then you crank it, then you hear the actual op amp distorting. And when you get to that level, yes, the different op amps make a huge difference. However, it all depends on the design. Some designs it makes marginal difference.
Yeah, I mean, so does Cinematic says, does Mike disagree with Josh? No, I think they would be on exactly the same ground.
Yeah.
If you take out your 4558D chip from your Tube Screamer and you put in something else, it will sound different.
Yeah. Nick Bovey says, Dan, you will end up designing and building pedals. You know that, don't you? It's been done, mate. I'm good.
Rod says, hello, Rod. Mick, you always say you're put off by too many knobs or complex pedals, but your technical knowledge of how components work is great. Why the hesitation or dislike? This is really interesting, Rod, and I'll try and explain it quickly. I do have a good head for technical stuff and explanation. Being a journalist for 20 years and having to explain stuff to people and do it in a way that's understandable, yeah, I'm quite good at that. And I do consultancy for people to help them explain things. I'm quite good at visual communications.
He's very good.
I have strength in that world. However, when I play the guitar, my brain shuts that side down. It literally shuts it down, and I cannot, even to the point of programming G2 and stuff like that, unless it's super, super basic, my ability to deal with any sort of complication stops, because the side of my brain that turns on is the guitar playing side, and that overtakes everything. And I sound like a hippie, but I've been doing it for long enough to know that if I start worrying about what's happening down there, missus, my playing just goes to crap, so I can't do it. However, I suspect if I was doing something like touring or playing in a pit or doing something that was the same every night and required
less of that,
on the fly, and you had to have the same set of sounds, I'd be all over it. I'd be very happy with using technology if it was the same every time, blah, blah, blah. But as it happens, the way I play tends to be, don't really like that, I want that, and I want to be able to change it very quickly. So I also think, sorry, just to finish this is way too long an answer, I'm very much a fan of a simple thing done perfectly rather than 8 compromised things done reasonably well.
That is lovely. Ernest Fuentes said, here's a question, why don't more pedal designers design MOSFET overdrives versus JFET, versus FET and JFET? My favourite OD is a MOSFET overdrive. Thoughts?
I think this relates to something else that Josh said in that episode, which is you can't really single out one component and go, this is doing that, because it's all dependent on the rest of the circuit.
Exactly.
So a MOSFET is what the
another style of FET.
Yeah, but it's a more efficient one or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, do we know any good MOSFET overdrives? I had a Full Drive 2 which had a MOSFET section in it, or was the
and I had the I had the standard version, and I prefer the standard version. It's a small part of the chain.
But I think, interestingly, after that show with Josh, I was around on the internet looking for FET-based pedals.
Were you?
Yeah, and actually there aren't as many as there are op-amp and diode pedals. So interesting question, Ernest. Snowblind, how about an episode with an amp that isn't a good pedal platform versus one that is a good pedal platform?
What's not a good pedal platform?
Exactly. Dan and I are going to do the opposite. We want you to suggest the worst pedal platform amps in history.
There you go.
And we're going to prove that they are awesome pedal platforms.
Nice!
So please, please, please tell us the amps you think are the worst pedal platforms in history, and I promise you we'll make them sound great with pedals.
All right, there you
I
go.
think that'll be interesting.
Brilliant. Mr. Moster, Devon's preferred tuning is CGC GCE. Yes, so I got this wrong. It's not the DAD gate intervals, it's an open C interval. And the thing is, when Devon was talking about, he got it from an open tuning from when he's listening to Zeppelin, and but it's actually it's the Zeppelin song Friends, where Jimmy Page uses the open C tuning.
Okay.
So yes, my hand up.
Got it wrong.
I got that completely
Hand out,
wrong.
Dan. Hand out. Raphael Boozer. Could you guys show a bit more of what the Bad Bob boost does? We have used the Bad Bob in a number of videos, but what it does, it's an FET based full range boost, so it boosts everything.
Yep.
And it's really lovely. So yeah, we'll feature it some more.
Special sparkly top end the thing has. It's
Yeah.
just divine.
It's really cool.
Yep. Tim Bentley, one thing that occurred to me during the amp development discussion at the beginning, given that the original aim was a clean amplification, why did the designers set the volume controls so they'd go well past the point of maximum headroom? Thank God they did, because that's the sound, but it seems odd that they thought there was a use for it.
That's a really great.
It's really good.
I'm going to speculate and speculate two reasons.
Okay.
One is when they were designing them there in the lab and they weren't thrashing them, they probably got to about 6 before it started overdriving.
Right.
Maybe 7. And then once it's being thrashed in a bar and it's been going for 2 hours and it's really burned in, that overdrive starts happening at 4.
Yeah.
Plus you get different valve wear and all of that.
To add to that, if someone is plugged into the amplifier and they're going, it's not going to overdrive. But if you've got, it's going to overdrive. Also,
How much current's coming out your hands?
exactly, and the higher the power rating they could put on the amplifiers, the better they would sell. And so they would just give it everything they've got, so that at the end they can say, yes, well, that's, the power rating of X. Anyway, possibly.
Rose Parade says, it's not like an electrical current, Josh. That's exactly what it is. Yes, I think Josh was saying that's exactly what it is. What he meant was when you touch the guitar or when you put your hand on the end of the jack plug or put the jack plug on your tongue, it won't give you shock, I think is what he meant.
Yes.
I think what he meant was it was a minute current.
Exactly.
Is that what he meant?
Yep. Tim Hereabout.
Hereabout.
That's what I said.
Hereabout.
My Scottish accent.
Yeah.
When is Dan's board going to make its debut? I'm working on it. I have to make a decision on a couple of pedals. I also have to make a decision on the amps I'm using in my live rig at the moment. So I'm working on it, but it shall make a debut soon.
Low definition owl. Is the Matchless new or borrowed? And have you got it because of the one you tried in Japan? It's not new. It is borrowed. It belongs to Neville Martin, my very good friend and colleague for many years. He bought it recently, and we did the Cream and Hendrix shows with it. He used it for that, and then I was like, can I borrow that please, because I think Dan's going to love it. And Dan said,
I love it.
and we haven't given it back to him yet, and we
Yeah.
must. Neville, really sorry. But yes, partly because of the one we played in Japan too. Remember that DC-30 in the store?
Yeah. There's on the vlog that I did, there's some footage of Rabia and you playing the DC-30. It's such a great sound.
But we have heard an amp just recently.
We have indeed.
Doesn't cost quite as much. That is doing a pretty good sound in that ballpark. More of which in due course. Shane, I'm guessing it's Peterson. So what happens when you feed 13 volts into a 9 volt pedal? What happens when you feed more instead of less?
Okay. It all depends on the design. Lots of pedals are designed to take 9 volt in, and then they have, if you have capacitors in the pedal that are only designed for 9 volt in, you can't put any more than 9 volt in, otherwise you will destroy the pedal. And lots of times there are regulators in the pedal that will drop the voltage from 9 volt down to 5 volts or whatever that the design works on. So it all depends on the design. Sometimes, if you put, for example, there are pedals that allow you to put more voltage in, and it will end up giving you more headroom.
Yeah.
You know, so
Great example recently. So the example that was used in the show, Josh was talking about if you deliver less voltage to the transistor, that makes it more gainy, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you deliver more voltage, it makes it more headroomy. Now, one recent example that's not a gain pedal would be my new wobbly thing, Vibe. Deja Vibe. The version 3 Deja Vibe, which now runs at 18 volts only and has tremendous amount of headroom in it, and I'm sure that's got something to do with it.
Killer.
Yeah.
Jay Bird asks again about the headroom in the amplifiers. So
could we explain the term headroom amps? We touched on it earlier.
Yeah.
Should we do the rails thing?
Sure.
Here's the rails.
So AC signal. My guitar. This is my guitar. It's lovely, and this is the headroom. And now you can hear everything. However, if I reduce the headroom, reduce the headroom, and here are my rails. Now, my AC signal wants to do this, but it can't. It gets locked off here, and that's where you get the top and bottom lopped off the wave, and those edges give you the distortion. So
1 watt amp, 5 watt amp, 100 watt amp. Is that headroom?
Yeah.
Ish.
That'll do for now.
That'll do for now. Tony Daniels, can we see more of your new tape delay looper, please, Dan?
So this is the Tensor by Red Panda. It's my favourite pedal find in like ages. I love it. Yes, so yes, that's one that's definitely going on the board. So you'll see that when I do the board build.
Big Johnny Baby Boy, hello. Big Johnny Baby Boy, you leave loads of comments as well. Thank you. When are you going to build the fuzz face that George Trips gave you the parts for? Great question.
Yeah,
he gave us a Bago fuzz face, which was a bunch of fuzz face bits in a bag.
Yeah, well, let's do that, and we'll go through, you know, the design of the fuzz face, and
could be a good vlog, I think.
Really, really good. Yes, perfect. Vincent Keith, can someone confirm the point of 2 wet amps is to get stereo on that effect? Aside from some sort of ping pong, wouldn't wet dry work just as well? It all depends on the effect. If it's 2 wet amplifiers and you've got like a stereo reverb or something, and it's different signals going to the amplifiers. A wet dry thing is one amplifier doesn't have the wet modulation or reverb and delay effects. And what that does is it helps your dry signal sit more prominent in the mix. So you can have a wet dry, you can have a wet dry wet rig, which is stereo with a dry amplifier in there. But what we are going to do, because there still seems to be a lot of questions around the whole wet dry thing.
Lots of people very confused about
we're going to do a
wet dry.
definitive wet dry show, and we're going to do with diagrams and puppets. It's going to be wonderful.
Puppets, I love that. Michael Marshall, what are your thoughts on rack units like the Eventide Eclipse? I actually don't know anything about racks because I've never really used them.
Right, I use them in my right up until I discovered the Electric Mistress. And I haven't looked at them since because I've been just fascinated with pedals. But yes, of course, there are some great rack units out there. More research is needed. I don't know what's...
Yeah.
You know.
The main thing against rack units is the form factor. They're massive. They require a separate case. They start to present all kinds of problems in terms of loops and signal and line level, and it's a whole other world. So maybe there's a question to ask there. Queek Sanchez, on mixed pedal board, no compressor. Any specific reason why? I get asked this a lot. Why I don't like compressors? Why I don't use compressors? I want the opposite of compression in a live environment. I don't want anything to get between what comes off the end of my pick and what comes out the amp. So if something's making it louder or quieter in a way that's not a dynamic that I want to give to it, not interested. Just because of the way I play, I want maximum dynamic from the pickup through the amp. Studio, totally different kettle of fish. I love compressors in the studio for everything. Drums, guitars, bass, vocals, magic things for recording. But live, I guess I don't use sounds that require compression.
Right.
You like them?
I do, but then again, it depends on the rig.
Yeah, but then, I say all of that, then one day I'll plug into an Origin slide rig and just sit
incredible.
there and just go, and it's going, So maybe it's about context and having a need to use it. And I don't have one is the answer.
Cool. Tony Noon says, I bought a Marine reverb and I recently ordered a Dan Letro big Big spender. Spinning cabinet simulator. Would it make more sense to have the speaker simulated before or after the reverb?
Good question.
Yes.
If you think about the classic setup, the reverb would be in the amp and the rotating speaker would be after the amp.
Unless the rotating speaker was the amp and
it had reverb
in it. So either way
Did the
works.
vibratones have reverb in them then?
The vibratones, I don't know.
Yeah, I've literally got no idea. Try it both ways, see which one you like.
Anthony Brown, this is on the Devon Townsend video. He asked, how did you get the crazy thick wire sound? Is the wire pedal after the drive pedals? No, the wire pedal is into the drive pedals. The CAE wire, it's a killer wire, and especially the way that...
it's a dual inductor, isn't it?
The CAE.
They call it a dual inductor, so I don't know if that means it has two inductors.
Right.
One would assume that it does.
Yeah,
whether that's got anything to do with it.
It's not just a clever name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, great wire pedal. I think especially for rock tones, the CAE is magic. And the way Devon plays, you have to put the Devon factor in there as well.
Brian Cleawer, sorry if we pronounced that wrong, Brian. To take power supply issues for pedals one step further and talk about venue power, and he's talking about 120 volts in North America. Any suggestions for dirty power in venues, basically? Only by a Furman power conditioner is the only thing that I would know about, or any other brand of good power conditioner.
Yeah, that's power when you're touring is a tricky one. There are some, Furman's a great brand. There are some other ones out there. Basically what happens is you feed this unit the power and then it cleans up and it sends out a constant voltage. So like here in the UK, I've measured the voltage on certain gigs I've done because that's the guy I am, and it's ranged anywhere from the lowest I got was 215 and then another one was 250. Wow. So it's massive. And you think about the way that the amps are biased.
Yeah.
And it all works on that voltage. So, it's...
Oh, why does my amp sound rubbish tonight? Well, it might only be getting 215 volts.
There you go.
How funny. Okay, so yeah, you can buy power conditioners. If you see a big touring band, they'll have a whole blooming lorry load full of them.
Yep.
To make sure that the power that the rig gets is clean and consistent.
Keith Blair said, David Grissom turned me onto the TC Electronic Chorus Plus, which is the Chorus Plus flange, the stereo.
Yeah.
Back in the early 90s. I still love it. Could you guys use it in your show sometime?
I've got the reissue one, which doesn't sound as good as the old analog one.
Right.
So I got the one that they did a Corona chorus.
Yes, okay.
In the same graphics,
Right.
but it doesn't sound the same. It doesn't sound the same.
We need to have a look at that. It's really, really interesting.
What was it called? TC... Was it called Chorus Flange?
Stereo Chorus Flange.
Yeah. Interestingly, as a quick aside,
Joe Bonamassa.
when I looked behind Bonamassa's 4 Tweed amps a couple of years ago, that's what was splitting the signal.
And also Eric Johnson.
Eric Johnson. Oh, and we should honk David Grissom as well. Acoustic duo.
It's a little plug.
Yep. See them in your neighbourhood soon. I have a wet dry setup, and I'm wanting to add a stereo looper pedal to my board. I'm at a total loss at how best to add this pedal to the chain. I do have a pedal switcher router on the board. Sounds like it's not a G2 gun. Any thoughts on this would be greatly appreciated. So how do you add a stereo looper to a wet dry wet rig?
You need to make sure that the looper has stereo ins and stereo outs, and so at least that can go to the wet amps. If you only have a single in, single out, you can only, if you've got the wet dry wet thing, it'll only go to one amplifier. As long as you can feed the stereo ins from the stereo wet setup, you'll be fine.
Does that mean it wouldn't be in the dry amp?
It wouldn't be in the dry amp, but why that's good is because if you create the loop and then you have that going through the wet amplifiers and then just send a signal just to your dry amplifier.
Yeah.
And then you can play your dry amplifier going over the wet amplifiers. It's really cool.
Which could be a problem if you're running 100% wet in the wet amps.
Yeah, but then you can just put tell you what, you just put a delay pedal at the end of your dry signal so that when you have your loop going, you can just put a bit of delay onto your dry signal.
Okay. If you can't do any of that and that doesn't work for you, is the only other option to have it before everything and just mono in and then it's mono.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
We're on the final page. John
Yeah,
Marquez.
Marquez.
Do I see Mick and Dan in doll form on the back wall?
You do. So these were made for us by Carol,
Oh, Carol.
who is an associate of Scotty Smith of Pro Analog Devices.
There you go.
And Carol very kindly made us these. I don't even what you call it. What do you call them? She does also make voodoo dolls. Okay, Pastor Kev 777. How different is the BC 107, the NRG Poker BC 107 booster to a Rangemaster?
It'd be quite similar.
Except that the Poker's got the bass and treble controls.
Yes, yeah. So, one thing with the Rangemasters is they're treble boosters. They have really limited bottom end. So lots of pedal designers, when they made these, they put in switchable different values capacitors to give you different bottom end. And one thing that Neil does is also give you some different top end options as well.
Do you know what the transistor in a Rangemaster should be?
There's a bunch of different.
So it's the same as Fuzzes. It was whatever they had.
Yeah. I think
AC 128s.
They used loads of them. They definitely used the NKTs as well.
Okay. Caleb Morton says, so I was playing out with some people a couple of days ago when a buddy came over to look at my board. He noticed that I had a D&M drive. Thank you, Caleb. That makes a big difference to us. And asked about how I liked it and what it was. Evidently, I went into such a detailed breakdown and it went on for such a long tangent. He stopped me and asked, that's way more than I was asking. Are you friends with these guys? To which I replied, you could say that. Thank you, Caleb.
That's awesome, Caleb.
We feel that.
Yeah,
Thank you very
thank you,
much.
mate. That's brilliant.
That's very kind.
Hamada El Mansour and Vincent Tuckwood said, what's wrong with Dan's brain?
This is because I alluded that there could be a whole show on what's wrong with Dan's brain.
Joey B says Dan needs some more Queensland sunshine to rejuvenate his mind and a few bananas to bend.
What is that? Banana bending?
But it's Queenslander, banana bender.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Why would you...
We're known as banana benders.
Okay.
Anyway.
Is it a sexual reference?
No, because we grow so many bananas in Queensland.
Bananas in Australia?
Oh, yeah.
Get on.
Yeah, massive banana farms in Australia.
Never knew that.
So in Queensland, they call them banana benders.
Oh, right. We all have strengths and weaknesses, don't we, Dan?
We do.
I can't understand complicated effects. You can't tie your shoelaces.
Cinematic. Can you guys jam together a bit more when testing pedals? It's so much fun when you do.
Oh, maybe we should. I was editing up a video that will go out tomorrow. It will actually go out tomorrow of when we went to visit Boss and we sat there and we jammed on Boss's new... Actually, we can say this. Wow, Boss has got a new product this week, the Next Tone amplifiers, which is a new generation of transistor amps, shock horror, that Dan and I have gone, do you know what? That doesn't sound bad at all.
Yeah.
And we were jamming on them in... Japan, and you can watch that video tomorrow.
The only thing I will say about jamming, I mean, it's a lot of fun. In fact, it's so much fun that we could just jam, and then it does make the whole editing thing a lot more.
Yeah. But it's good.
But yes, it is.
It would be interesting to do that a bit more because it would help my playing. One of the conversations that Dan and I were having this morning is my Strat's just been refretted. It's in this bag. When did we pick it up? Last Tuesday?
Last Tuesday.
It's been in the bag since last Tuesday. So I have no hours to play the guitar anymore, which is really frustrating.
But we do have some gigs coming up.
Yeah, so I will be forced to play the guitar.
Yes.
So jamming might help me play the guitar a bit more. Shawnee is Cubs fan 1.
It's very cool.
Cubs is presumably some sort of sports team.
Yeah. Sports team.
Yeah. Hey guys, love the show. What do you guys think of the new Marshall Origins series? If you've tried them, what pedals did you like to them?
We heard them when they were released at NAMM.
Yeah.
And they sounded great. We haven't actually tried one.
Need to try one. I took one. I saw that they had a particle board cabinet and ran for the hills. So that's my prejudice is coming through. Yeah. So they look like they've really been built to a budget, but there's nothing inherently wrong with that. We should try them.
Okay.
We should try them. Cool.
Low Def Al
again
says, I have 2 questions. Was this actually an excuse to test the new green screen setup that you appear to be using?
Okay, little lesson on depth of field. Right. Unless I'm an idiot, Dan and I are somewhere approximately in focus.
This is a toy cow. That
Yeah.
one's far away.
That lens is set at f3.2 or thereabouts, which is quite shallow depth of field. So by the time it reaches the wall at the back, it's out of focus. What that does, especially, is that Dan and I are lit from the front and lit back there as well. It does make it look a bit like it's green screen sometimes.
That's hilarious.
Touch the back wall, Dan. So it's not green screened, it is genuine. Although we've had so many complaints about the grey, I've had an idea actually.
Have you?
Help us out with this. One of the reasons it looks so drab in here is that when we've got the full wide shot, you can see the black curtains down the sides. And I think if we get rid of the black curtains
Done.
at the back and put some pedal shelves up or something, it'll just look better.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, let's get a man in.
Yeah, okay.
And the second question, more seriously, when did that Hughes and Kettner head sneak in, and which model is it? That is over Dan's shoulder there. A Hughes, could you lean this way, mate?
Is that right?
It's Hughes and Kettner Pure Tone. It's basically a 50 watt plexi. It's a visceral, hurtful, damaging amplifier.
It's maybe my favourite Hughes and Kettner amp.
Yeah, well, you struggle with it, don't you? It's a bit harsh.
Yes, but when you hear it in the mix,
Yeah.
it is killer.
Yeah, we'll fire it up. It's
Yeah.
it's a great amp. It's not like pretty much any other Hughes and Kettner because it's hand wired. It's got no trickery, and it's basically 50 watt plexi.
Yeah,
I
very
believe.
Matthew Scanlon asks, would you ever use a multi-effects? Depends what you use by depends what you mean by multi-effects, like we use the H9 and things like that. It's multi-effects are difficult because there's so much to go in, and they tend to be all digital. One thing that we both really like is at least having an analog drive-through. But, you know, who knows? We do. It's not that we don't ever try these things out. You know, whenever new technology comes along, Mick and I always plug into it and have a go. I'm yet to find something like that I connect with. But, you know, I think the H9's awesome.
Okay, I've got 3 pedals in my hand. This is why I will never use multi-effects.
Right.
Dan, when was that first designed, even though it's the Wazza edition? Forget it's the Wazza edition.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe 80s, maybe late 70s. Definitely late 70s.
Late 70s. That one is late 70s. That one is...
no, that's actually 1980.
Yep. I think the late 70s again.
The point is they're all old. They're all over 40 years old. Right?
Yep.
How relevant is that on your pedal board today?
It's perfect.
How good does it sound?
It sounds magic.
How much did it cost in 1984 or whenever you bought it?
5.5 beans.
5.5 beans. How much is it worth now if you wanted to sell it?
More than 5.5 beans.
More than 5.5 beans. Okay, so what have we got there? We've got something that's old, that is 100% relevant tonally and functionally in 2018, and it's worth more now than it was when you bought it. Still got a Boss ME5, have you?
It's a very good point.
Does it tick any of those boxes?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
There you go. I rest my case on multi-effects. Over-designed, they don't sound as good, and they don't hold their value, which means they're bad value for money. So I'm sorry, but that's how I feel about it.
Gain stacking.
It's good. We needed some levity. And finally, Jack Spratt, which is presumably your real name. Just what we need. More fuzzy overdrive walking using personal, very expensive pedal boards. Fair enough, Jack.
Touche.
Did I show you? I was going to go for the standard one, but this is way more expensive.
Right, I like that.
Yeah.
So you put this...
Yeah.
and you put that on. Okay.
Yeah. But I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
Reshoot.
Okay, yeah.
Really expensive.
Yep.
This was expensive.
Yeah.
And this
these two together, and you can't buy that anymore. I think they might be doing a reissue, but incredibly expensive.
This is so expensive. Actually.